first, before I go through what I prepared to talk about, obviously we've all seen the reports and the video coming out of Moscow. This violent shooting at looks like a shopping mall. Can't speak much to the details of it. I mean, this was all just breaking before I came on out here, so we're trying to get more information, but really would refer to Russian authorities to speak to it. The images are just horrible and just hard to watch, and our thoughts obviously are going to be with the victims of this terrible, terrible shooting attack. And I think, you look at that video if you have, and you got to recognize that there's some moms and dads and brothers and sisters and sons and daughters that haven't gotten the news yet. And this is going to be a tough day. So our thoughts are with them. You might have also seen, hopefully you saw the State Department or embassy there put out a notice to all Americans in Moscow to avoid any large gathering, concerts, obviously shopping malls, anything like that, just for their own safety. They should stay put where they are and stay plugged into the State Department for any additional updates and information.
You're still gathering information, but do you have any sense whether this could be linked at all to the conflict in Ukraine?
There is no indication at this time that Ukraine or Ukrainians were involved in this shooting. But again, it's just broke. We're taking a look at it, but I would disabuse you at this early hour of any connection.
Hello, everyone. This is Alex with Bridging News, and we are here on a breaking news day. It's been a very difficult day for the country of Russia, its citizens. Many families have been affected by this unbelievable event. We've decided to come to you live on YouTube, on Rumble, Twitter, X, and many other platforms. Our guests tonight are geopolitical analysts and people that really can help us cope with what has happened here in the last 24 hours. I bring on to the program Carl Zha. Welcome to the program, Carl. Thank you for joining us this evening. And without further ado, Angelo Giuliano. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been quite an interesting 24 hours. I know at approximately 3:30 in the morning China time last night, my phone was ringing off the hook from our distinguished partners, RT, who we all know, had called me and said, there's some big news, Alex. We need your insight. And I'm sure you gentlemen have also added to that. Carl, when you first heard of the news, your thoughts on this matter, what was going through your mind? And then we'll go over to Angelo.
Well, I received a call at 7 a.m. in the morning from our friends in RT. I was in shock because I was actually in Moscow last year. In the summer, I really enjoy the atmosphere. People are friendly. And, this could have been me if I was in Russia doing the sightseeing. And it's the news just got from bad to worse because as the death toll keep rising, I think now it's almost 100 people dead and over 100 wounded. And the good thing is they have apprehended several of the perpetrators. So it's a good, we have a good possibility to get to the bottom of this.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We're going to move over to Angelo. Angelo, your thoughts when you first read and heard of the news?
Well, quite shocking. I think we need to look at the first reactions, pointing the collective was pointing at ISIS. I think that was an easy one. We know who's behind ISIS, but it seems like the last news that actually we are going to share together, it seems like they are more and more pointing at Ukraine. So that is, I think it might be dramatic for the possible potential escalation against Ukraine. But I think that here we have a leader, a Russian leader, who is very pragmatic, he's not emotional, he's going to take his actions in due time. And it's going to be very measured, but it's not, you see, I have the impression that the collective West, whoever is behind this, and I think the directions are pointing at the US indirectly through proxies. They want to elicit a response from Putin. And I think Putin is going to be measured. He's not going to give the same response that the West is expecting. He's going according to his own term, own pace. And I think this is, it's not going to affect in any way what is happening on the ground in Ukraine. Your thoughts, gentlemen?
Carl, we're going to pass it over to you.
Yeah. I mean, the usual suspect, either Ukraine or ISIS, but it doesn't really matter because both are Western proxies. It's interesting that we would have the ISIS claiming responsibility at this point. Now this is in particular time since October, there has been a genocide committed on Gaza. Yet ISIS is attacking Russia. Isn't it weird that ISIS is not attacking targets in U.S. and Israel, but chose at this opportunity in time to attack Russia? And what makes them more dodgy is the U.S. Embassy actually issued a travel warning 2 weeks before on March 7th. They warn American citizens to stay away from crowded places, from malls, and particularly from concerts, from going to concert halls. And now we just have the report from CBS News where a U.S. intelligence official spoke to the CBS News and confirmed that this U.S. embassy issued a warning because the U.S. intelligence supposedly have the intelligence of the impending attack, and they have supposedly warned Russian government. Now, but yet right after this terrible incident happened, we have John Kirby, the spokesperson for the White House, came out and say, well, right now it's too early to attribute this to any political motivation. Well, okay, if you don't know anything, just say that you don't know anything. Why would you then speculate that it's not politically motivated? Especially when just last week, John Kirby has issued a warning himself about Americans to stay away from a large gathering of crowds and malls and concert halls. So, it's to me, it's very suspicious, especially with the timing. This is right after the successful re-election of Putin. Putin just received an overwhelming mandate to prosecute basically the special military operation in Ukraine. And he's elected for another 6 years. And at the same time, Russia is clearly winning on the battlefield of Ukraine. And there's nothing Ukraine or its Western backers could do about it. So this seems like a desperate attempt by either of these Western proxies to deal a blow to the morale of Russian people. But I think this is going to be backfire. I mean, a tragedy of this magnitude is going to pull people together. You already see people in Moscow; they're lining up to donate blood and try whatever they can to help the victims. So I believe Putin just went on the Russian television to give a speech, and they designated.
Okay.
Lights out. No problem, Carl. We'll see you in a moment. So I'm just going to add to this, Carl. We'll come back to you in a second there. Angelo, let me read something to you. I'm not sure if you've actually read it, but you've definitely tweeted about it already today, and your Twitter and your X is on fire. This was official from the U.S. Embassy and the government of the United States, dated March 7th. Location, Moscow, Russia. Listen up, viewers. This is very important to hear these details. This wasn't March 21st or March 19th. Detailed, very detailed here. March 7th, right? That's a couple of weeks ago. The embassy is monitoring reports that extremists, this is what was put on the warning here. Once again, this is from the U.S. Embassy warning its citizens in Russia. The embassy is monitoring reports that extremists have imminent plans to target large gatherings in Moscow, They point out Moscow. They don't just say Russia or, areas around Russia. And we know there's a conflict going on there. So they've gone out of their way to really focus in razor sharp on this. It's kind of like, well, I told you so, but I didn't really tell you everything. Okay, and I'm going to continue with this. Once again, imminent plans to target large gatherings in Moscow to include, I'm not making this up. You can go immediately to the U.S. Embassy government page. Well, it's still up. Okay, well, it's still up. Large gatherings in Moscow to include concerts. And U.S. citizens should be advised to avoid large gatherings over the next 48 hours. This is not a coincidence. Angelo, right here, 2 weeks ago, in writing on a U.S. Embassy government website, warning people in Moscow, if you knew so much to say that the embassy is monitoring reports from extremists, did you share that information with the Russian government to avoid this deadly massacre? Or is there a lot more to that statement than meets the eye? Angelo, tell us.
Well, it is obvious here. It's not about who pulls the trigger. It's the one that actually is controlling. Unfortunately, the U.S. is behind. Actually, when you look at terrorism, just the historic of terrorism, who has actually created terrorism in the world? Very often you will see actually the UK, you had Assad, you had the US. Those are the one that pretty much invented terrorism. ISIS, when you look at the who was behind the creation of ISIS, Al Qaeda, was always the US. ISIS is Mossad alongside with the CIA. So they were creators of those terrorist cells. So now, why Moscow and why now? What is the situation right now in Ukraine? In Ukraine, we are close to collapse of the front. Now they need to do a diversion. And what is happening right now is that we saw, for example, Tucker Carlson and actually even Carl Zha, he went to Moscow. And guess what? Moscow is business as usual. The economy is doing well. Everything is peaceful. And what they want to do to those terrorist attacks is actually to install, it's like the strategy of tension. You want to create tension in Russia because it's very highly frustrating, and they need those small wins. They think it's a small win, but in reality, it's bad for their cause. It's highlighting what we all knew all along, that this Ukro-Nazi regime, because that's what they are. They are Nazis in Ukraine, are terrorists. And this is not the first time. I don't know if you remember, they tried to kill Dugin, Alexander Dugin, and there were lots of attacks of citizens, terrorist attacks of Russian citizens, all along perpetrated by Ukrainians. So that would not be the first time. And we saw the last news. Maybe we can go into this. The last news is that the one that they are silenced, those terrorists, they were actually heading back to Ukraine. And maybe you can give us some updates, Alex. How many did they catch, and what is the connection with Ukraine we have so far?
So we're reading the bottom ticker tape below us here, and welcome back to the program, Carl. Sorry about that technical issue there. Great to have you back here. We're reading that it's 11 at the moment, but that number seems to be growing. In fact, that we've just received some footage here that I'm going to play on. I don't wish this upon anyone, but this is one of the terrorists. We did, of course, blur out his image just to be careful. But this is a country that you do not want to commit this crime to. They will not allow you to go in there, slaughter their citizens, and then hide behind a lawyer and maybe get out on bond, and then maybe just maybe, be taken to court at a later date, clean shaven. No, this is how Russia does it when they deal with people. And let's have a look.
Нет, When did you arrive from Turkey?
Just wait for this to load,
What
gentlemen.
did you do in Turkey?
Okay, there it is.
When did you arrive from Turkey? What did you do in Turkey? My documents expired, so I crossed the border. Once again, your full name. Year of birth, 1998. What did you do in Crocus yesterday? What did you do in Crocus? I was shooting. You were shooting? You were shooting who? Why? For money. Money? Let's put him up. For how much money? Some 500,000 of what? Of rubles. Did you get it from who? I have received only one half. It was transferred to my card. Where's your card? He gave it and it was in my clothes, in my jacket, so I lost it. Where did you get weapons? They gave it to us. Who they? I don't know who they. They texted me on Telegram without names, without anything. How did they find you? You found them or they found you? They texted me. Why did they text you in particular? I don't know. I was listening to... But how come they just offer you to kill people out of thin air? It doesn't happen like this. What was on Telegram? I was listening to a prophet, to a sermon. You were listening to sermons, and who texted you? Assistant of a preacher. What's his name? No name, no last name, no nothing. They just texted me. When did they text you? A month ago. Who texted you? Exactly. He texted me, he promised me 1 million rubles. What did he promise you? What did he want from you? He offered me and I agreed. What did he offer? He offered money. For what? Money for what? He offered me to do these deeds for money. What deeds exactly? To kill people. To kill who? He just sent me the location. Did they tell you who to kill? People. What people? Doesn't matter. Anyone you meet there, anyone you encounter, just enter the location and kill people? Yes. Once again, your full name and your year of birth. Born in 1998. September 17th.
This doesn't sound like ISIS. I mean, this is not how ISIS operate. ISIS people, they usually kill themselves, and they will not be captured. And they usually don't work for money. You know, like the people fighting for ISIS are fighting for ideology. This guy looks like a schmuck who is not very smart, not very educated, maybe very desperate. I mean, 1 million ruble is about $10,000 US. So he only received half of it. So he's saying for $5,000 he went on a killing spree. And the fact that they are, I think the Russian authority handles this very well because they output this raw footage right away. You know, they did not wait. They have full transparency. Like Alex, like if they had him cleaned up, clean shaven and parade out in a court, people will say, oh, this is a kangaroo court. He probably already been coerced and forced to confess, whatever. This is like right at the scene of his capture. And they have it translated. This directly contradicts from the lines of the U.S. State Department, because the U.S. has said, we confirm the ISIS claim. We confirm that, you know, the ISIS, this was done by ISIS. And they're like a little bit too eager to say that ISIS did this. And from what we have seen from this confession, if what this guy said is true, this does not look like an ISIS job to me at all.
Your microphone, Alex, your microphone is off.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that. Lots going on behind the scenes here. Just downloading some new footage we're going to bring up here on the show in a few minutes. I wanted to mention, Carl, your comments about, this doesn't seem to match the narrative here. While you were left the program briefly, I read a statement here, and this is the official statement. I'm just going to read it one more time for you and the program to really digest what is going on here. This is official from the U.S. Embassy government website, dated, not today, dated March the 7th. The embassy is monitoring reports that extremists, they named it extremists, have imminent plans to target large gatherings in Moscow to include concerts. And U.S. citizens should be advised to avoid large gatherings. Like I said, this is not a coincidence. This is something really, it's almost fiction. It's so bizarre. My thoughts on this are the following. I was talking with Brian Berletic earlier today, and of course, with a lot of crimes, you follow the money, but this one is you follow the hardware. You follow what kind of gear they were using, what kind of guns, what caliber was the guns, where they got their training, how they got their training. And to talk about this in more detail, I know that Carl and I have had this conversation a few times where, and same with the Duran, Alex Christoforou has basically said, these weapons that were, dumped into the Ukraine over the last 2 years end up being on the black market. They make their way onto the streets of Europe. And of course, Russia, we're seeing it. My suspicion here is, I think we have quite an interesting situation here where, depending on what they come up with, what that military hardware is, you have exactly what Vladimir Putin is trying to destroy, and that's people that are radicalized. And this is, that first individual. I don't know. I would like to see what the other ones are. It seems to me like they weren't really working together. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, gentlemen?
Your microphone, Carl. I maybe.
From what we know so far, from what the information the Russian authority have released, that we know they have captured 4 suspects who have Russian passport, but they're from Tajikistan, and these people, they were shacking up with a bunch of Tajik migrant workers in Moscow. According to their confession, they didn't have jobs for a long time, and so they were desperate for money. And the thing you mentioned about hardware, Alex. So this is what I read online. This may not be accurate, but I'm sure our listeners and viewers can correct me if I'm wrong. From the picture was that was posted. Of the weapons they use. This looks like the AK-12 and the magazines. And what I have read is this is what been recovered by the Russian police. What I have read is that these AK-12 are likely they're Russian weapons, but they're likely being captured or somehow the Ukrainians got their hands on and probably supplied those weapons or some other, foreign agencies supply those weapons to cover their own tracks. I mean, this is a very common tactics because during the Afghan war against Soviet Union, the CIA initially they don't want to make it too obvious, so they try to source a lot of Soviet weapons for the Mujahideens, and when they couldn't acquire enough, they actually went to bought a lot of Chinese-made copies of the Soviet AKs and then supply them to the Mujahideens in Afghanistan. So, this is what we know about the hardware. The viewers, feel free to chip in your opinions to the comments. I'm looking at the comments right now.
Yeah, I just want to say that we passed the 1,000 viewers mark. So thank you, everyone, for joining the program today. I just want to say before we continue on with this program, Angelo Giuliano is also here. Links in the description below for everyone's channel as well. We are broadcasting also on WeChat as well, and Bridging News, our application. We will have links on how to get that at a later time here. I will put that into the description as you're watching, and various other channels as well. I'm going to move on to you now, Angelo. We were speaking about this just prior to the program, and you had launched a tweet, or X, or whatever we want to call it, and it immediately gathered some steam. Do you want to talk about that, the tweet that you put out on your channel, and what happened, your feedback from that?
Well, it is about the source of terrorism in general, because we don't go much into the roots of terrorism, who started terrorism around the world. Well, terrorism is an act of violence to achieve a political outcome. And when you see around the world, since World War II, you had lots of terrorism around the world, but very often the terrorism was actually organized by the US, the collective West, I would say. But I think on the forefront is you have the US, you have the MI6, you have the Mossad, and that's how did they start? It was Al Qaeda at first. They had Al Qaeda, they had the Mujahideen to fight against the USSR. So the USSR and Russia has been actually victim for a long time of those terrorist acts. And when you look at the Chechen War was also an act of the CIA. More recently, I'm going to give you another example of the actually Maidan. When you look at Maidan, the Ukrainian coup or revolution, whatever you think about it, they actually there was the mark of the CIA behind this, and they also hired Central Asian mercenaries. They were from Georgia. And what did they do? They were actually shooting at policemen and protesters, and that's how we got to where we are in Ukraine now. So it's very common that they use Central Asian thugs, schmucks, like you said just before, low-life people, and here in this case, like Carl Zha just said before, it's not ISIS. ISIS, they are ideology driven, and they die doing their mission. They're not driven by money. So, and I would add one more thing is we see that they actually, from what I've learned so far, but again, it's early. I think there's lots of cross-examination and the information are still coming out. But they went through Turkey, from what I understand. And Turkey actually is a platform of terrorism. There's lots of terrorists that actually go through Turkey, including, I don't know if you remember, the Xinjiang terrorists, ETIM. They were all actually going through Turkey. And there's probably, I mean, back then, there are some suspicions that actually Turkey was somehow backing those terrorists in Xinjiang. It's a bit sensitive information, but so again, what my tweet was about, the fact that the US doesn't need to pull the trigger, but there's probably what I call a tacit agreement. I'll give you an example. It's the same as maybe Ansar Allah, the Houthis, they might have gone to Russia and China and say, well, you know what? We are going to fight for Gaza, and we are going to do this and that against those boats because we need to do something about this genocide. That's a tacit agreement. In this case, it might be the same. Passive or active involvement, but involvement, yes, because nothing would happen if there's not a final okay by the US. Final okay would mean just you close an eye. You know it's happening, you close an eye. And that's might be what happened. And it could be anything. I mean, up to now we don't have all the information, but I wouldn't exclude rogue elements in Ukraine. And those rogue elements, I want to point out, this is extremely important. We mentioned just before, we poured so much money, weapons, there are weapons everywhere. The EU and the US, they have created a problem that is going to explode in their face because it's enormous, the quantity of weapons, the black market. And I'm looking at, once Ukraine falls, you are going to have those Ukro-Nazi elements that are going to be extremely angry. Why? Because they are going to realize they're being used, and they are going to turn against their masters. Remember Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda did turn against the US. It's Frankenstein. You know the story of Frankenstein? You have the monster that actually turns against its own creators. And I think the risk that we are going to see is that those people, one day they'll find out they've been fooled, and they actually, you'll have the payback time. They'll get their taste of medicine. And that's the risk that we are facing in Europe in the long term, because Ukraine is going to be a Kosovo on steroids. Wait, Kosovo on steroids.
I mean, this gets very complex. I've got another note that I want to bring up to you guys. If they were issuing this warning, and I'm not getting off this March 7th because I'm stuck on this date here. If the Americans were issuing this warning, they must have had intelligence. And I mean, for them to immediately discredit, saying, no, Ukraine, no, we don't think it's involved in any way. For them to discredit so fast, I mean, they must have an idea who was behind this, and why did they not feel it was important to update?
Alex, you know, the secret services in the US, they're very efficient. Remember 9/11, the same day, they did found a passport, right? The same day. So they might be, you know, they might be very efficient. But I think here, I would say we need to look at what we say. We call it cui bono. Remember cui bono. To whom benefits the crime? Remember, Nord Stream, what did they do? Nord Stream, the first thing they did was pointing a finger at Russia. The only country in the world that actually would not benefit from that was Russia. Here, who benefits from that? That's very simple. Very simple. You have Ukraine, you have the US. Some people
already have Ukrainian officials blaming this on a a false flag attack on Russia. They claim this is the same as Balslan apartment attack in Russia back in, I think this like late 1990s. This was reported in the Western media as well. You know, they reported that Putin was actually engineered this terrorist attack by Chechen terrorists against separatists against this group of Russian children that was held hostage to justify the second Chechen war. I read this in New York Times, and now the Ukrainians are saying, "Oh, this is another a false flag operation." But why? Why would they need another false flag operation? Putin just won election. He has a popular mandate. Overwhelming majority of Russians are behind him to continue the special operation in Ukraine. You know, the Russian public do not need to be mobilized even further. They're already supporting what the Russian army is doing in Ukraine. So it doesn't make sense. And what you said earlier, Angelo, about strategic attention, about Turkey's role in the Cold War. You would know about Operation Gladio, which like Italy was its center when NATO was doing all these cloak and dagger operation. Now Turkey is another axis of front for the Cold War. You know, the equivalent of Operation Gladio in Turkey is through this network of ultra-nationalist group called the Grey Wolves, which is a pan-Turkic nationalist organization. And the Grey Wolves are deeply tied to supporting Xinjiang separatism in China, but also to support separatism in Russia as well, including in the Caucasus, in Chechnya, and also in Central Asia. So there's that connection. And I sent you a tweet in the private chat, Alex. We have a tweet from DD Geopolitics. This is a snapshot of Jake Sullivan's email to Hillary Clinton. This was by WikiLeaks, when WikiLeaks leaked out the Hillary Clinton's email. So Jake Sullivan, who is now the national security advisor of Biden, he was actually Clinton's man. He was a Hillary's man. He was supposed to take power back in a Hillary Clinton presidency, but we know Clinton presidency didn't happen. But so he was always very tight with Hillary Clinton. So he sent an email to Hillary back in 2011. Back when during the Arab springtime when Obama and Hillary were funding jihadis all across the Middle East. And what he said in this email, he said, see the last item. Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. Otherwise, things have been basically turned out as expected. And this email was dated from February 12, 2012, at the beginning of the Syrian war, right? And now the same Jake Sullivan got a second chance to serve in the zombie Biden's presidency. We know Biden is not really making foreign policy decisions. This guy can barely form a coherent sentence, right? So Jake Sullivan is the guy who is responsible for architecting much of the U.S. foreign policy, including the proxy war in Ukraine, including supporting Israel, and including containment of China. So this was what Jake Sullivan said back 10 years ago to Hillary. Al-Qaeda is on our side. I mean, now he is in power again. It's not a great leap of faith to believe that Jake Sullivan is up to his same tricks again. And then I have another a tweet I sent to the chat, Alex. This is a tweet. This is just a screen capture I took from the CBS News website on this development in Russia. And in the CBS News, it says, U.S. warned Russia about planned terrorist attack in Moscow. National Security Council says. Remember, Jake Sullivan is a head of the National Security Council. He's a national security advisor. And this CBS News says the United States sharing information about a potential terrorist attack in Moscow with Russia's government earlier this month. Spokesperson for the National Security Council said the U.S. Embassy in Russia on March 7th warned U.S. citizens to avoid crowds and say it was monitoring reports that extremist attack might attack large gathering in Moscow. Earlier this month, the U.S. government had information about a planned terrorist attack in Moscow, potentially targeting large gathering to include concerts, which prompted the State Department to issue a public advisory to Americans in Russia. The National Security Council spokesperson, Adrian Watson, said. The U.S. government also shares this information with Russian authorities in accordance with its longstanding duty to warn policy, Watson said. Well, so why don't they be more forthright to come to go to the public with more details about what they know? I mean, the common excuse they use is like, oh, we don't want to disclose our sources. We don't want to. No, you don't have to. You can provide enough details about who is carrying out these attacks without, going to details of how you discover it, right? I mean, instead we have John Kirby saying, oh, it's too early to tell whether it's politically motivated. And then when after ISIS claimed responsibility, now they're dead set on saying, oh, it's ISIS. U.S. Intelligence has confirmed ISIS claim is certified as true. I mean, this is just a little bit too convenient. And just like Angelo, you said, Sui Bono, how does Russia benefit this? But how would United States benefit from this? Because the United States right now is actually facing a geopolitical quandary because they're facing a three-front war. They're bogged down in Ukraine, which there's no prospect for victory for the Ukrainian side. They are deeply involved in supporting Israel committing atrocity in Gaza, which is, losing whatever soft power U.S. had across the world. And at the same time, U.S. Navy demonstrated its complete impotence in the face of the Ansar Allah Houthi blockade of the shippings. You have U.S. Admiral telling U.S. media, say this is the largest battle U.S. Navy have fought since World War II. Well, guess what, buddy? And you are losing. You're losing to the Houthis. The Yemenis are now a legitimate world naval power. They're redirecting 11% of the world's shipping traffic. And guess what? They're not blocking ship from China and Russia. China actually getting a large discount on the shipping insurance through the Red Sea, because the Houthis, they know not to attack the Chinese. And that's why you have all the ships under call sign. They're saying, oh, we're China owned, or we have a Chinese crew aboard. We're going to a Chinese destination. Please don't attack us. Even with that British ship that falsely claimed that it was China owned, but I guess the Yemenis had better intelligence and they hit it anyway. So right now, U.S. desperately is looking for a win to at least to distract from its own impotence. This is why you are seeing an uptick in the so-called Xinjiang atrocity stories. Xinjiang atrocity porn is again on Twitter. This is to distract from what's happening in Israel, what's happening in Palestine, and this is another terrorist attack on Russia would serve another distraction to shift the attention of the world from the spotlight on the U.S. empire is actually scrambling and declining, and then they want to shift that focus to Russia and put on the onus on the Russian government to have Putin to show that, okay, now Putin have to answer for why they didn't provide security for his people. But this is going to backfire, because obviously what it's going to do is it's going to pull the Russian people together, because this is what people do in times of terrorist attacks, in times of invasion, adversity. People will come together, and there will be more solidarity. People will rally behind the flag. People will rally behind Putin, and this is right now. U.S. is not convincing anybody right now.
No, I agree with you. I mean, they use the triple B strategy, or triple four. They're adding to it by the week. Bomb, ban, or bankrupt, or bully, and that seems to be the playbook. Now that we're on talking about the shipping routes, I heard an interesting comment, and a gentleman was asking me last week about the Americans' accusations against China for dumping goods internationally. I can tell you from my experience here that, listen, if you don't make tires, if you don't make clothes, if you don't manufacture anything in your country, you are reliable on China. And I call it the Lego economy. And what's interesting here is if you focus on the United States, on the East Coast of the United States, let's focus in on the automobiles. And this is really starting to come into the headlines, where they're saying, oh, these e-vehicles are so expensive. Well, clearly they haven't seen the $10,000 BYD model that every single delivery driver would buy in the United States. On top of that, every Uber driver would buy it in the United States to keep that cost down. But they can't even get these charging stations across the country. That's the first one. The second one is United States does not really manufacture cars anymore. They are, I'm going to call it a Lego facility. They are not a manufacturing, but more of a assembly plant. If you read it in the newspapers in Canada, they'll say, oh, General Motors at their assembly plant. That's right. They get the tires in the boxes, the rims that come on another shipment. They're, grabbing the sofa for the motorhome from another part of China and whatever. They just put it together. It's like Lego. Now, the interesting thing is that the United States, and I'm going to either pass this to Angelo or Carl, the U.S. accusations against China for dumping goods internationally. How can they avoid when the people on the other side are saying, we need this stuff. If we don't get this stuff, we can't make cars. We can't put shoes on our kids' feet. I mean, it's Carl, unmute your microphone there. I mean, They're blaming the very person that is keeping their country going. It's crazy.
And people keep on saying, "Oh, China, because they have, they have lax labor practices, they have slave labor, whatever." But if people actually look at videos of inside a U.S. car factory versus inside a Chinese car factory, all the new Chinese car factories are highly automated. You have robots doing everything, and then you have. If you switch to the image inside the U.S. car factory, they still have people, bolting on the doors and stuff. I mean, of course, China will be able to make cheaper cars, and this is. But people don't even realize how far behind the U.S. manufacturer have fallen. And this is the thing.
Answer me this. Answer me this.
I used to say. Okay,
tell me.
Hold that thought. Let me finish this one thought.
You got it.
I used to say that U.S. making nothing but weapons and OnlyFans domestically, but right now I just realized even that's not true. U.S. Navy just went to South Korea and Japan asking for help to help upgrade U.S. naval build up capabilities because U.S. lacks. China has 200 times the naval buildup capability than United States. Yes, you heard that right. 200 times. So this U.S. is going to Japan and South Korea to ask for help. How can how can we ramp up our naval production? This is a joke. Okay, sorry. Go back to you, Alex.
I just want to add this one here. Thanks, Derek. Yeah, you got it right. No doubt about it. So anyway, guys, I really want to focus in on this. Then we'll get back to the Russia stuff in a moment here. But this all is connected because it's either economic warfare or it's terrorism or whatever it is to try to destabilize these countries. Now, if you look at the manufacturing, I'm really concerned about the new energy vehicles here. They are very successful here in China. Of course, you're going to have competition here. Competition is going to weed out the weak people. But as they move forward, I'm in a city of 32 million, Chongqing. Every day, you can see more of these cars coming onto the streets. And you ask these Americans, North Americans, just like my mother, I spoke with her and I said, Mom, new energy vehicles. She says, they can't take away that American muscle. I said, well, it's not about taking away the American muscle, the American car from you. It's about, trying to, this can actually change your life. And when you explain it to a person, an elderly person like her, and say, listen, get behind a car, sit in a Neo, sit in a Zeekr, sit in a BYD. You lose your vision when you get around 80, but if you can see a car on a monitor that you couldn't see with even your spectacles on, and you're about to slam into it, well, there's AI technology saving your life for you. Second of all, is they're really hell-bent on, this power. We need gas power because these cars are weak. They're not weak. When I first sat in a new energy vehicle here in China, I got out of the car and I said, wait a minute, there's no way this thing is battery powered. It can't be. And I got out and I was looking at the back. I said, where's the exhaust pipe? Somebody's, am I on candid camera? Is somebody making a video about me? I mean, are they having a laugh at me? And I got out and I was in that car and I said, this is unbelievable. It's crazy.
I think it's culture, Alex. I just want to jump on this because we don't touch this enough, and I think we can give some inputs when it comes to why do we have those different strategy when it comes to economy, society, absolutely everything. And it's just, I would say it comes down to cultural. You see, China has a pragmatic scientific approach. The West is ideology driven. So in China, it's about tangible stuff. It's not about ideology.
Let's switch back. Are you okay if we switch back to the some of the Russian stuff now, guys? You okay with that?
Yes, sure.
Just Carl, 1 minute. Let me have the last word on this. And
Angelo, if you got something to add, go for it. And then we'll get back to the stuff.
because I want to play the devil's advocate here, right? So it's not
Mhm.
like we're
Let's
just
do it.
all one-sided. So I think that the people in North America, particularly, who are skeptical about EVs, they do have a point. Why? Because United States lacks the infrastructure, that lacks a power generation to support the transition to EVs. You know, you have Texas that people will freeze their ass off in a storm. You think that U.S. electric grid can support a lot of new vehicle on the road? No, of
You
course
can't.
not. And you know, U.S. power grid does not have excess power generation capability, and those privatized companies are not looking to add anymore. They just want to squeeze out juice out of the existing grid to charge more. And that's not how China works. You know, China keep on adding capacity because they know, you know, you build it, they will come. They will always find you know, use for this additional energy. And China is building out all these amazing charging stations and infrastructure for the EV transition. US doesn't have that. US doesn't have a coordinated government policy. They're all responding to like, oh, what China is doing, but it's all very ad hoc, like piecemeal Mickey Mouse stuff. It's not going to work. I'm sorry, it's not going to work in US until we have actual responsible, capable government.
Okay, guys. So we got some just some updates here, and guys, thank you for that segment. I know bringing it up, I wasn't going to get out of this quickly with a 2-minute answer, so I expected that, and we'll have another show on that later for sure as we get more into China topics. I'm going to read something here that just came across the newswire here. It says Russian President Vladimir Putin has addressed the nation in the aftermath of the attack of the city hall here, the Crocus City Hall, saying that additional anti-terrorist measures have since been implemented in Moscow and Moscow regions. I can imagine that will be some sort of, don't want to use the word lockdown, but we'll just call it extra security measures. The main goal now is to prevent those. Now, listen carefully on this one, guys, because I was not aware of this, but here we go. The main goal now is to prevent those who are behind this bloodbath from committing new crimes. So it seems like this saga has definitely not ended. Now, 11 people have been detained over the shooting in Krasnogorsk, including 4 direct perpetrators of the attack. He said the 4 suspects were trying to flee Russia. Mark it. And I got to tell you, this came right from Angelo. You predicted this right on the money. The 4 suspects were trying to flee Russia for Ukraine, with arrangements being made for them across the border, he added. According to the president, investigators are now working to identify the accomplices of the terrorism or the terrorists who stashed weapons for them, provided with vehicles, and perpetrated escape routes into the Ukraine. Well. Let's unpack that, gentlemen. Angelo, I'm throwing this one over to you.
Well, I think now they are going to hit much harder. I wouldn't be surprised that they start hitting the leadership. In Kiev. I think Zelensky is at risk now. He might not be enjoying the millions of the money he's got from the military-industrial complex. You know, he's a highly corrupt person, and he might not enjoy the villas he's got in Miami and London. I think there's a risk. There's a risk of escalation. Putin is going to do something. It's going to be tough. But on the other side, keep in mind that we are facing, when you look at the front is about to collapse. And this is why you have Macron gesticulating, I'm sending 20,000 troops. Well, guess what? Macron needs 20,000 troops just for the Olympics. It doesn't have those troops, and it doesn't have ammunition. He's just, he's only good in making Photoshop pictures when he looks like beefed up like Zelensky. He's just clowns. So in reality, what is happening right now is, it's going according to plan, but Putin needs to make a point here. And I think there's a risk that he might at some point decapitate not necessarily Zelensky, but the leadership in Kiev. I wouldn't be surprised that it would hit directly Kiev and the leadership. But then it's speculation, but something will happen. And I think, keep in mind, people tend to forget this is not a war. We are still into a special military operation, but now we are on the fringe of going into something much more serious. And from the last news we got from Brian Beletic and all the Duran, it seems like there's no more like air defense. They don't have enough anti-air defense missiles. So basically now you have Russia that actually can do some serious bombing inside Ukraine, and the front is collapsing. So what happens is that they need to prepare to withdraw troops. They will have to withdraw troops, and this is going to be the biggest humiliation ever for NATO. NATO is over. Everything is over. It's just a matter of time. So right now, time is on the side of Russia. Time is on the side of the multipolar world. And we are living this very special time of transition. Now the question is, are they going to accept that? And I think they are mad dogs. It's a wounded dog. The most dangerous you can have is a wounded dog. And this is the last gasp. It's a hit. And I think they are going to be extremely irrational before maybe they get back to their senses and they become adults. Because what we need right now is adults on the table. You cannot win that war. You've lost. The world is changing. Just face it. There's a transition. You are not, the collective West is not the world. Rule-based order, it's not, people do not believe in that. Time is changed. You need to face it. Just become adults. What we have is globalist elites, which have hijacked Western societies because again, it's not the Western people. Western societies are hijacked by mad people. They want to hold on to power. They do not accept this transition. They need to accept it. And the tipping point, the inflection moment is Ukraine. Ukraine was all along the inflection moment. Transition from US hegemony to multipolar world. Face it, become adult, sit down on the table and negotiate something. You need to prepare the world of tomorrow.
I want to add to that, Angelo, and I think I've got a good argument here. If you look back, let's go back all the way to, I guess it would be March of 1999, the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia. Now that lasted 78 days of complete aerial bombardment, okay? And my father at the time said to me a couple of weeks before that happened, he says, Clinton is in trouble. The whole administration is not going to protect him. We all know the Monica Lewinsky story where he got caught lying about the whole situation and he was about to be impeached, and out of nowhere, Madeleine Albright, the whole gang, the drums started beating. And I said, Dad, why does America care about Yugoslavia? And why does America care about Muslims in this area? It's the first time in his history I've ever heard about it, okay? And he says, this is the playbook. Watch. And this was the first time that NATO had ever gone in. And when they went in, guys, and I visited all these regions that were the former Yugoslavia, where there was Bosnia, Herzegovina, Kosovo, Croatia, Slovenia, Slovakia, Serbia. When I rolled into Serbia, that place, years after that war, America didn't go back in there to rebuild it. They did nothing, absolutely nothing to that place. And they used this rule book. And that's why I'm saying, Angelo, these guys that are running NATO now are the same old dogs that were doing it back 20 some years ago. And they have this confidence. They said, you know what? We can rip this place apart. We ripped Yugoslavia apart in 78 days. We bombed it. We got away with it. We dropped massive amount of artillery. We killed people and we left scattered bombs all over the place. We walked away. Ha ha. They did nothing about it. And that's where I think NATO still thinks that if we put all this hardware, we keep going. Well, they've passed the 78 days in Ukraine, that's for sure. And if we pump $250 billion, just maybe we can get the good old days of Yugoslavia back and really teach, Vladimir Putin a lesson. And I think that's the problem here. I think they are so arrogant that they think that they can, continue to move in their hardware. It's not working. They move it in, it gets blown up. Technology has changed here. We're in 2024. I was talking to Patrick Lancaster the other day. Patrick said, it's drone warfare. It's absolute drone warfare. And you see these guys wearing these FPV drone things, flying them, dropping them, direct hit. Amazing video that just went out on his channel. 250,000 views, I think, in the first 24 hours. I mean, of a channel that suppresses it. But that's my whole point. 78 days of NATO bombing in Yugoslavia. They blew the place up. They walked away. They laughed at it. They crippled that country. And no wonder the Serbian guy here was one of the first guys to come out and say, you know what? And I made notes earlier today about this. He said pretty much after John Kirby was talking, he says, John Kirby, you're full of shit. You are totally full of shit. You're lying. And Maria Zakharova also came in there and pretty much stood behind him. If the audience doesn't understand why Serbia takes such a different approach to this, go back and understand what really happened there. It was catastrophic. And I cannot tell you, that was the last time, I think, guys, that we actually had true journalists embedded either on the front line or covering a war, because most of these guys now that are telling us what's going on in Ukraine, well, they're coming from, I don't know, Warsaw. They're reporting from Warsaw, from the Sheraton Warsaw or the Ritz-Carlton in Frankfurt, telling what thousands of miles away is. So I really think that this whole thing with Russia, they're trying the tactics, because remember, there was a lot of issues going on with terrorist attacks, bombings, Islamic fundamentalists in this NATO 78 days in bombing in Yugoslavia. And they used religion too. They brought religion into this. So this could be the second part of it. That's just my thoughts. Anybody want to add to it?
Yeah, remember the NATO Spring Commander back then who directed this campaign against Yugoslavia? I'm talking about Wesley Clark. He actually came out and said after 9/11 that U.S. had a plan to take out 7 countries in 5 years. And those are Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off with Iran. I mean, U.S. always try to get Iran, but other than Iran, U.S. pretty much carry out its regime change operation against the 6 other countries. The Iran is the odd one out because they couldn't do anything to Iran. Not that they didn't try, but this has always been the plan. And you mentioned about Yugoslavia, so I'm a little bit younger than you, Alex. I was in high school back then, and I was a paper boy for New York Times. So I would read New York Times every day. And back then, I bought the whole narrative, a NATO narrative on Yugoslavia. Well, first during the Bosnian War. But by the time of Kosovo War came along, I was like, oh, no, wait a minute. This is not, something is not right here. And then that's when they bombed the Chinese embassy in Belgrade.
Yep.
That's the only single instance of bombing that was the target was selected by the CIA, and the NATO plane they chose to carry out the attacks. They didn't fly from the bases in Germany. They flew from Whitman Air Base in United States, flew directly to bomb the Chinese embassy in Belgrade, a target that's selected, only target that was selected by CIA during the entire war. And then they say, oh, it's a big accident because of map error. I mean, nobody in China bought that. China at that time had to kind of swallow its pride because in 1998, China really was in a much weaker position vis-a-vis United States. They wouldn't be able do something like that right now. But I think you are right. There's a mode of operandum here. They have perfected throughout the years, starting with by the way, Kosovo is still under NATO occupation, and it's a shithole. It's a place
I've been there.
full.
I've been there
It's
too.
place full of drugs, crimes, and corruption, and most of the men either have to immigrate elsewhere to look for jobs, or they just join criminal gangs. I mean, it's not a happy place. It's been occupied by NATO since the end of Kosovo War, which was like end of 1990s. I mean, it's been
Yeah, but Carl, there's no motivation to make Kosovo better. It's a great washing machine. It's a fantastic washing machine. Chaos equals cash. That's the last thing they don't want to bring peace and prosperity to Kosovo. Hell no. No, it's a great washing machine. But let's follow the dots here, because after the NATO invasion, then you started seeing things happening in the Ukraine. And I think at that time, you started to see, the Maidan, then you had the Orange Revolution, you had all these things dating all the way back into the early 2000s. And I just remember watching in the center of Kiev, thousands of people, not for a day, not for a week, but months, going there, protesting, enjoying nice cooked meals, holding up probably very expensive placards, probably anywhere from $300 to $500. They were really well printed out, and trying to overthrow the government. I mean, these are very planned attempts to overthrow governments. They were successful. The NATO destruction of Yugoslavia was successful. Now they are trying to claw back what they can against Russia. And unfortunately, there's a guy in there that's saying, bring it on. Let's go. I've got 6 more years. I can walk up a flight of stairs to get on an airplane. My brain is still intact. Joe, are you there? Who knows? So my feelings about this is this attack that happened? And guys, these are big numbers. Shooting 100 people, like killing 100 people and wounding another 150 to 200. And I guess the count is going higher. This was well orchestrated, well trained. I don't just think that guy that had a boot on his head did it for $5,000 was told a few weeks ago. There's no way that something like that. And maybe this March 7th warning was kind of like, hey guys, we already paid you. Hurry up. You're late for the dance.
I don't
know.
I
Carl,
think that's I think what the March 7th warning is, it offered U.S. a chance of plausible deniability. They can now say, oh, see, I warned you. I did my part. I warned you. See, that you didn't do anything was your fault, right? But I don't think Russians are buying it. I mean, from what I read right now, many people still believe the U.S. is ultimately behind the planning. In fact, there was the head of the head of Donetsk People's Republic, Pushkin. He actually said, "We know who is behind this. We know who the customer and financiers are. We know the cynicism of the Ukrainian regime and those who control it." And this is his comment on the terror attack. And he added that terrorism has no nationality, but there are criminal regimes, and the source of terror must be eradicated with iron determination. And you know what? I think at this point, the best scenario for the people of Ukraine is actually a war that's settled in Russia's favor. I say this because I actually recently watched a documentary by a Japanese documentary filmmaker who is famous in China. He interviewed a couple, a Ukrainian woman who married a Chinese guy who experienced a war from February 2022. They were living in Kharkiv. And so they were in their apartment when their buildings were bombed. So they escaped with the help of Chinese embassy, and they first escaped to Western Ukraine, and from there, because she was married to a Chinese national, so they flew to China with the mother-in-law. But the mother-in-law decided to, because China is a completely alien place, and she actually decided to go to Russia. She went to Moscow to work there, and so this Japanese filmmaker was very surprised. It's like, you're a Ukrainian, you experienced a war, why did you go to Russia? And she said, I grew up in Soviet Union. Russia and Ukraine is the same. It's the same to me. And for me, my reason to go to Moscow is because I want to be able to access to my daughter who lives in China. From Russia, I can go to China anytime I want. That's not possible if I go to Ukraine. There's nothing left for me in Ukraine anymore, because only blood I have is my daughter. So that's when I realized, like a lot of people don't realize, they know a lot of Ukrainian refugees who fled to Europe, but they don't know there's equally a large number of Ukrainians that chose to migrate to Russia and make their life in Russia. And when everything settles, people can look at the footage of Mariupol. Russia already rebuilt Mariupol into a nice, clean place. Ukraine is not going to, like you said, Kosovo has been occupied by NATO for 20 years. It's still a shithole. NATO lacks either the resources nor the will to rebuild Ukraine. Russia could do that. And especially, if they also rope in China to do Belt and Road project. So that's something that United States will never offer, and it's never even on the table. All the U.S. can offer is more weapons. What they're doing to Taiwan and Philippines right now, they can't offer real economic development. They never could.
Carl, before I let Angelo jump in there, we keep saying, your comment, you're saying, will NATO rebuild or help protect Ukraine while they rebuild? They don't want that. They never want that. That's the last thing NATO wants. I'm trying to connect the dots here for everybody on this screen that this is what NATO does. NATO's playbook, and we have it right in front of us. And that's why I brought up, the Yugoslavia example. Checks and balances out the window. What happened to that artillery that was brought into that region? It went in and it ended up on the streets of Europe. Terrorist attacks happened shortly after that. The playbook gets rebooted again and again and again and again. We're seeing countries that suffered economic hardship. Haiti is going through another situation again, even though the Americans went in there and tried to rebuild it. Billions of dollars were raised. And that's what I'm saying, that NATO, that's not their intention to go in there. It's to funnel billions of dollars of artillery. You have any time that you have a business plan that you can convince a country that they got to give up 2% of their GDP every 2 years. Wow, you got a great business plan, and you got one hell of a washing machine. NATO, they love destruction. Killing, they make a killing on the killing. And I have never, ever, ever trusted those guys. As Canadians, we used to always put a Canadian flag on our backpack to represent, not that we were proud to be Canadian, but actually to represent that we weren't Americans. And I used to have that thought go through my mind. And it's true. Anybody that's watching the show, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If they're Canadians, if they're Americans, they will probably have either ordered a maple leaf and put it on their backpack from eBay. But anyway, let's get through to this. I know, guys, I'm going somewhere with this.
No. Let me jump in about this flag. I mean, you guys, Canadians used to be cool. What happened to Canadians?
Well, let me tell you.
Now with
Okay.
Trudeau is, he makes almost Macron look cool. I mean, how low is that? I mean, really.
Well, let me add, you haven't heard the rest of this part, because this is where it gets beautiful. And this is why it's coming, Angelo. So the dots are being connected here. So on my vacation, when I went to discover, and people ask me, why don't you go to somewhere nice? Why are you going to Belgrade 2 years after the NATO bombed the hell out of the country? Why not? I want to learn history. I want to understand it. I arrived in Belgrade. I went out for dinner, and I had an Irish friend with me. And after dinner, I think most of you guys know this, in the eastern parts of Europe, it's very, very normal to get bottle service. You go out for drinks and stuff like that. And I went up to a club there, and I said, yeah, I'd like a table for two outside, a bottle there, no problem. And the girl says, no, I'm not going to let you in. And I said, why? She said, you American? I said, no, I'm a proud Canadian. And she said, even worse. And I said, okay, why? And she said, I'll make you a deal. You walk 3 blocks straight ahead, turn to your left. You see that bright light there? Go have a look at that. When you see that bright light there, I'll let you in. I'll give you any table you want. I walk 3 blocks, probably 150 meters at about 7:30 in the evening, bright lights, turn to my left, massive Canadian flag hanging from a bombed out building with a question mark, black on it. I went back to the hotel. The bartender, and anybody that's watching this program, Serbian guys are built like a brick. Anyway, I don't have to say it. But these guys are tough guys. They've been through a lot. And the guy said to me, hey, looks like you've seen a ghost. I said, well, yeah, I saw my Canadian flag hanging from a bombed out building. And he says, did you know that you guys have fast jets? And I was an anti-aircraft gunner. He says, 70% of your Canadian jets flew the sorties, which destroyed Yugoslavia. And that's the last day that I ever traveled with a Canadian flag on anything that I own. And that tells you, we used to be cool, but we used to be led into a lot of big mistakes. And we're seeing one right now here where we're walking into another NATO, I would say Yugoslavia part 2, but yet it's the other way around this time. Gentlemen.
Well, I mean, there were times when Canada has some wiggle room to not completely piggyback on the U.S. foreign adventures. But now when Washington says jump, Trudeau says how high? I mean, right now it's really not much difference. They're just appendage of the U.S. empire.
I mean, Carl, is this a statement? What happened on the weekend here? We're seeing a lot of people that have been, killed here. This is big, big numbers. Is this a statement? I mean, this isn't a couple people shot, rogue, lone wolf in a shopping mall. Last count we had here, and viewers, you can update us and I'll put it on here, but the last count we had was 133 and growing. And when they say, 150 in critical condition, you could bet that at least 50% of those aren't going to make it. This is big. These are big, big numbers. So this is a statement.
Yeah, I think they chose the place to inflict the maximum amount of casualties possible. It's meant to shock. It's meant to shock and create an atmosphere of fear. I remember in China, this happened in 2014 during the Kunming train station attack, when a group of terrorists, knife-wielding terrorists, went to the Kunming train station and just stabbing anybody they saw. And at that time, that was, that created a lot of fear and consternation, anger. So I can sympathize. I can see how, sympathize with Moscovites right now. They must be going through similar emotions, but this is what terrorism is designed to do. It's designed to create fear. But at the end of the day, I think you cannot cower the Russian people. I mean, these people withstood to Hitler. They're not gonna bend just because a one terror attack. This is gonna just sharpen the Russian resolve to deal with Ukraine issue. This is a foremost urgent issue right now for Russia. So I don't think all the subterfuge about ISIS, all that bullcrap. I don't think Putin buys any of that shit. It's going to be, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think, Angelo nailed it earlier. There's going to be some major pushback here. I mean, look what Netanyahu did after his incident happened. He's obliterated Gaza completely. I wouldn't be surprised if Russia is the one that actually escalates the situation here and says, you know what? Okay, enough is enough. When they get the confirmed story here, I think we're going to see cities along the coast that play a significant role there, which they've talked about before. We're talking Odessa. We're talking maybe the connection to Transnistria as well, which will pretty much sew up any access to the waterways and officially at that point will make Ukraine landlocked. I cannot see restraint here. Not with these numbers. If it was, a small, and even one life is too much, but even if it was a small amount, you could understand. But this guy's under some serious pressure here, and 100 and some people dead, right smack in the middle of the city. I don't know, Angelo. You think he's gonna?
I don't know. I mean, we might have some younger audience here, but I'm old enough to remember there was a similar attack also in a concert hall in Moscow during the late phase of the Chechen War. And that did not stop Russian pacifying Chechnya. Remember, Chechnya during the Chechen War, Washington fully supported the Chechen separatists. New York Times were publishing glowing accounts of all these Chechen rebel leaders, making them out to be some kind of heroes. And during that time, the people, Chechnya was a terrible place. There was slavery. There were slaves who were being openly traded. There was no safety. And you look at the Chechnya now. Chechnya now is a nice, clean place. And this is why I say the best hope for the people of Ukraine right now is complete and total Russian victory. And then there will be a chance for actual rebuild, like what happened in Mariupol, like what happened in Chechnya. Like Chechnya and now and before are night and day difference. Whereas NATO-occupied place like Kosovo is still a freaking festering wound in Europe. And that's if Ukraine is to be allowed to continue to exist as a battleground, as a proxy war against Russia, it's just going to prolong people's suffering in Ukraine. The best chance for peace and stability right now looks like complete and total Russian victory.
Yeah, it is quite shocking. I don't know sometimes I try to think to look at what happened in those last few years. I mean, especially since Ukraine, how brutal the world is becoming. Really, not that it's becoming. Actually, it hasn't changed. You see, I mean, especially we saw the Holocaust. I mean, we tend to think, well, that was the past. But in reality, look at what those elites are doing. Because again, we are talking about elites that want to hold on to power. In Ukraine, we are talking about probably 500,000 people that died for a globalist agenda. They want to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. It's very clear. They do not care for 1 second about Ukrainians. Then we see Palestinians. I mean, the slaughter. It's a massacre. Civilians, unarmed civilians, thousands of babies being killed. Now we see they're hiring. The U.S. is on the background. They're doing this in Russia, killing civilians like this. How brutal is that? And you see, I have the impression that if they really could, they would, if they could, they would drop nuclear bombs. They are as mad as that because they want to hold on to power. So the only thing that is restraining them is that they are facing other countries that have nuclear power bombs. But otherwise, I mean, remember, Carl, the U.S. wanted to drop nuclear power bombs into China, right? They would have
Well, they
done
were
it.
planning to. They were
They
planning
were
to in
planning-
1958. They were
yeah,
planning to use nukes against China.
and they have preemptive strike policy. That means this is a possibility. It is a possibility. You see, the advantage that Russia has is they have a very high level of air defense. And that means that they would be able to react. And this is why actually people, they tend to forget that why Russia doesn't want NATO to expand eastward. It's very simple, because it's the time of reaction. Time of reaction. You are struck by a nuclear power bomb. You need enough time to react. The closer you get to Russia, the higher is the risk, because they will not be able to identify what is coming. So that puts us in a much more difficult position. So what I'm saying is that I'm very worried, because it is pure madness, completely pure madness. And you see, this Western hegemony is being built on containment, destruction, chaos all along. Those revolutions they call for human rights, freedom, and so on. What did it bring to Ukraine? It was a tool. It's just like, empty words. We are going to bring you democracy. It's never been so worse than that. I mean, there's no more like autocratic regime than Zelensky. He's banned opposition. He's banned medias. He's a dictator. And he's not. And the most important, he's not working for his own country. I mean, that's the foundation. You see, the U.S. We need to point out this. This is so important, because everybody talks about democracy, but they have no clue. The precondition for democracy is sovereignty. It is about self-determination of people, meaning that I am going to be able to decide for my own fate, right? You want to export that, but it's going to be decided in Washington. You are not. It's the most anti-democratic movement, what they want to do. It's going to be my democracy on my own terms. It is not. Sovereignty, if we want to build a better world, is going to be the ground up. Sovereignty first. People need to decide for their own fate. But this is going against this globalist agenda. We need to point out that what they want to do is a globalist agenda, which is going to be ruled by globalist elites, multinational corporation, and ultimately destruction of nation state. And it's going to be a world of the 1% against the 99%. Why am I saying this? Because we need to remind people there's a geopolitics, it's country to countries, but there's a higher game is globalist elites, and they want to hold on to power. They do not care about country. So if you care about your country, you need to go against this agenda. They don't care about country, they don't care about individual, they don't care about family. It's a project of deconstruction. It's evil, it's satanist. It is somehow. And they are willing to go to the rock bottom. They do not care about civilians. And when I look at what is happening in Gaza, it's a social experiment. I do believe that the way they are acting, they're willing to do that to civilian Palestinians, but you know what? They do that to them today, they'll do that to you tomorrow. They will do that to their own population, because it's a police state, prison state. The US, for example, 4% of the world population, 25% of the incarcerated population. The risk, because see people, they take the side of their country, Italy, or you're in the collective West, and somehow you feel okay, because you have your hands on the narrative, right? Ultimately, people need to be careful, because they are the first victims. If you're American, you are yourself a victim of your own system. It's not about us and them. We are the 99% of the people victim of the 1% globalist elites. They want to destroy this world. And what we have,
I think most Americans today already waking up to the fact that their politicians are shit and they don't give a crap about them. And the real problem is how do they get these fuckers out? And but the problem is, the politicians would just swap onto one group of jokers for another one, and they're essentially the same. They're all these people. They may call them Republicans or Democrats, but their interests are more aligned with each other than with average Americans. These people, they date each other, they marry each other, they go to party together. You guys seen the picture with Donald Trump and Hillary and Bill Clinton together, and they all visit like Epstein's Island together, right? I mean, like,
and they also like Nikki Haley will probably end up working for Raytheon or something here in the next few months, or she'll date someone and then divorce her husband and work for Raytheon. Guys, I'm bringing up a couple of these comments on the screen here because I think it's fair from time to time to bring up comments that most people would like deleted. But this guy is very persistent, or girl, I'm not sure who it is. This comment here has Putin has become a dictator and he uses fear, terror, and fibs. It should come as no surprise that it attracts violence and hatred. That's the first comment. Here's the second comment. And I'm going to give this juicy one over to Carl, and we'll come back to Angela in a moment. Don't believe a word these dictatorship worshippers say. I guess that's us, right? For example, they are against respecting the free vote of people like in Taiwan, against individual freedoms, etc. Who wants to dig their teeth
How about
into
respecting the free vote of people of Russia? They just voted. They just voted overwhelmingly for Putin. How does that make him a dictator? He used to have an election. He just had an election and he won. I mean, isn't that what democracy is about? I mean, like, because right now in the West, when we talk about democracy, what we're mostly talking about just the process, about just the electoral process, voting. Well, Russia is definitely an electoral democracy. They hold elections. And so what is your criteria of democracy? Is because Russia is not a vassal state of United States, because Russia does not answer bid and call of Washington. I mean, why would you want that? Why would you want to be the running dog of Washington, right? I mean, why would any self-respecting people want to be a vassal of what? I mean, even when Macron said Europe shouldn't be a vassal to the United States, and he got attacked. He got attacked in major mainstream public, mainstream media in Europe and by European politicians for saying so non-controversial stuff like Europeans shouldn't be vassal states to the United States. So what are you saying? You're saying Europe should be the vassal state to the United States? Russia and China should be vassal of the United States? Why? Who voted? Who voted for the United States to be the global hegemon? Is the people of China or people of Russia or even people of Europe voted for Washington to be the arbitrator of the rule-based international order? No. Like Angelo said, that's not democracy. Democracy is, people have their own voice. People have spoke up in Russia, and people in Russia have spoke up and said they like Putin. Putin is doing a good job. We like Putin to continue to do a good job. So how is that dictatorship? I mean, this is just you're just playing with words here now.
Carl, are you familiar with the Levada Institute, right? This polling agency, which is actually financed by the West. Well, the rating of Putin, according to this agency, is close to 80%. So this is a Western-sponsored, Western-funded institute that actually analyze the favors that Putin has, the support he has. So basically, it's in line with the results. In addition to that, this is for Russia. So basically, you cannot say it's even rigged. It's not rigged. And then openly, when we look at the opposition, there's opposition, but the opposition is probably even worse than what the collective West would want, because the second biggest party is the communists. So that is for Russia. When it comes to China, for example, we all know that, and not only by talking to people, but the Howard Institute, it says clearly that there's 90 to 95% of support of the population for the CPC. But guess what? You know what? We don't even need to discuss about this. Why? Putin needs to be good for Russians. Why should it be good for Americans? Who the F are you to judge what is happening in Russia? If it's bad, if you don't like it, who gives a shit, right? Who gives a shit? Russia needs to like him. It shouldn't be, because and you know what Putin says? Because they ask him, oh, they don't like him, and Putin said, you know what? You're not my boss. I work for Russians. You need to find a leader that is going to be good for your own people and that delivers results. What we have in the West is an illusion of democracy, and we need to go back to the foundation, sovereignty. But then the problem is it's a key element. It's a key element, really. The rules of the game need to be written by the people. What we have in the US and in the West in general is that the elites, the 1%, they wrote the rules of the game. So now, let's say you and me, Carl, we are going to play a game, but I get to choose the rules of the game. But guess what? I'm going to make sure that you are going to lose all the time. And if people want to re-empower themselves, they need to write the rules of the game. And they don't want that. Because they, people realize, they know it's all about the rule of the game. Once you have a fair game, then everything changes.
Yeah, well said. I mean, like the problem is, like Eric Lee said, in China you cannot change the party, but you can change the policies. In US, you can change the parties, but you cannot change the policies. It's always the same policy, same agenda of screwing the poor and feed the rich. It's always a socialism for the rich and fuck the poor. And that has always been the program. And now it's fucking everybody. And now all these the elite in US, they look at the rest of the American just as peons. Same thing, like they're no different than people from elsewhere in the world. They're all resources to where they can extract wealth from. So this is why we have the decaying U.S. As a state. The empire. This is the positive. I'm always the glass is half full type of guy. So the positive outcome is U.S. is declining. U.S. capability is eroding. Like John Mearsheimer, he always said it doesn't matter about intentions, it's all about capability. He was talking about China, but he is actually very correct about United States. It's about capabilities. Right now, we need to destroy the capability of United States to cause mischiefs around the world, because no matter what, some other jackass is always going to get in the office and cause problems. But thankfully, there's so much self-inflicted pains on the United States that U.S. is losing its capability to do much more harm. I mean,
it didn't
still
have
much
to be
more
like,
progress needs to be done. But
yeah, but you see, Carl, I wish the best for Americans. I wish the best for every single person on earth. What I'm saying is that though Americans are the first victims, it didn't have to be like this, really. And it's not about you win, I lose. 你是我活. It's not about this. It's about, we have world economy is a cake. We can make the cake bigger. But if we are containing,
see, you're speaking like a Chinese now, Angelo. But the American elite, they don't believe that. They believe zero-sum competition. They don't believe like giving the cake could get bigger. No, the cake is all for me, none for you.
And I do believe China, Russia, actually the global South, they're not going to. They really have this philosophy. Of, because they have different concerns, they're not less ideology driven. It is about tangible stuff. They've been, we are talking about people that have been starving, they've been contained. The reason they are where they are, it's because we've been stripping their resources, we've been containing them, bringing chaos. We didn't want them to build up because it's very mathematics. They have a bigger population. If they do well, they are going to surpass the West, and that's obvious. It didn't have to be.
And the thing is, if U.S. is blessed with abundant natural resources and the
Yes.
perfect geopolitical, the perfect geography with two oceans on either side. So US don't really have to worry about invasions. So if US actually apply itself and develop United States rather than trying to be the global hegemon, people in US can still live very comfortably, very much well off. Even as China became the #1 economy, people in United States can still be live better lives, richer lives. But that's not what our elite have in plans. They don't care about the rest of the Americans. They just want more for themselves.
Gentlemen, I'm going to ask a question here into the chat section. Just so you know that we have over 3,200 viewers on tonight's show. Not bad, guys. Not bad. Great. Good stuff. It's awesome. I'm just trying to keep up with the comments, but I did ask a question in the comments. Who do you think is behind this attack? Now, you're free to use some of examples like maybe, I don't know, the CIA or a terrorist organization or a certain government or whatever. You guys put it up there. We're going to bring it up on the screen here. I'm going to dip back and let Angelo and Carl have the screen so I can focus. There's a lot of moving parts going on here, guys. And when you're the host of the show, you have to monitor a lot of these tens of thousands of comments. I think we went over, I think we're almost about 8,000 comments already. So I'm going to sneak in the backstage, and I want to see you guys see what creative minds come up with here with a live show of over 3,000 people. Who do you think is behind these attacks? Now, it could be funding it, supplying the weapons, maybe a country or an organization. Anything? Any other ideas you guys want to give them, gentlemen?
I'm gonna let Angelo to take this one first because
That's a tough one. It's a that's the speculation. But we could do by elimination actually. Maybe we could try by elimination. And I would say there's a lot of people that actually mentioned Mossad and the involvement of Israel. I would rule that out. I would rule that out because I do think that Israel has a much more pragmatic approach when it comes to this type of action. Israel is actually, I think Israel is hedging its bets when it comes to the US. We see that the Abraham Accord is part of it, but Israel is also common interests, very close interests with Russia. I mean, it's what we call those strategic ambiguity. You engage, but by engagement, you have influence over countries, as opposed to putting sanctions and going frontally. So when I look at Israel, and believe me, I'm anti-Zionist to the extreme, but I do believe that they are very pragmatic. Israel is also very close to China. They have projects together. It is actually preparing, maybe it might be preparing for the world of tomorrow, but it's not playing both sides. It's still a US vassal state. Don't get me wrong. So I would rule out completely Mossad out of this. Completely. That's the first one. ISIS, I would say less. We see the profile of those people. They are thugs. They look much more to what we saw, the Georgians that were in Maidan, those mercenaries, and probably I would say Ukraine and maybe some logistic help from the CIA. I would say without the CIA, it seems almost impossible. That's quite we are talking about 11 people. They might need more. I mean, we know that Ukrainian secret services they're quite immersed into Russia, but I would say they might have needed a support. And at the most passive would be a tacit approval. But that's speculation. It's not an exercise I like. But Carl, what is your take?
I'm gonna be coy, and I'm pretty sure who did it. I'm pretty sure the one organization or country that's behind the attack on Moscow concert, it's the same one that carried out the Nord Stream attack. I stick by that.
I would say the same, actually. I would say the same. Pretty much similar. It is. It is.
I mean, the Nord Stream attack. We don't know. We don't know who did it, but it's in a very most surveyed area in the whole Atlantic in that region. It's since the time of Cold War, they have all kind of surveillance on the seafloor over there, but it's possible. Right now you have mainstream media leaks trying to blame this on Ukraine after the Seymour Hersh expose. Because they're like, no, Seymour Hersh is crazy. But now they're trying to push out this the idea is a bunch of ragtag Ukrainian group carry out this very sophisticated attack in one of the world's most trafficked and most surveyed seafloor, and expect us to believe that. I mean, even if it was Ukrainian who carried out, we know who would train them, who gave them the green light, who allowed them to operate, and probably provided the funding and equipment too. And this is my guess for the recent attack in Moscow as well, because the people, the actual peons who are being captured right now, they might not be directly, they might not be directly CIA, but their backers, the people who ultimately provided the funding and training and logistics, and I don't think Ukraine government alone at this point has the capability to do that. I mean, they need help. They would have need help, outside help to. So that's all I gotta say.
I would add one thing actually. Remember what happened with Nord Stream. Did the collective West blame, let's say Ukraine, or I think it would be easy to shift the whatever to give all the fault to Ukraine. The collective West, especially one of the biggest victim was actually the EU. They didn't blame, even though now they're pointing the fingers at Zaluzhny, right? But he's an easy target. Now he's out of the picture. That's easy, but they are still not blaming Ukraine. And guess what? If maybe one day the news will come out that it's linked to Ukraine and maybe vaguely the CIA, but will it make a difference? Those people, they'll shift. The news will appear, but it's going to be like 1 second, and people will forget. But in reality, they won't blame that. That's how they play the game, and they're willing to kill civilians. That's terrorism, but because they're Russians, they'll change. They'll be like, they call them not terrorist victims but casualties.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to see Eiffel Tower getting light up with Russian flag, okay? You're not going to have people in the West saying, we're all Muscovites now. Today, we're all Russian, right? And that's not going to happen. They're not going to put up lights on the Empire State Building. And, because there has been a concerted effort in the West to dehumanize the Russian people. So they're not even deserving of being mourned, of being sending proper condolences, like proper human beings. So, but it doesn't matter, because in the long-term scheme of things, terrorism never could change the big picture. This is just like the other terrorist attack in the early 2000s. There was a prior Moscow attack, a theater attack by the Chechen separatists. That did not alter the outcome of Chechen war. Chechnya was pacified, and now it's a nice, clean place. And I believe same thing is going to happen to Ukraine, because the West can't even produce enough 155 millimeter artillery shells for Ukraine. Despite U.S. supposedly #1 economy, despite the combined quote industrial might of U.S. and Europe, they couldn't even make something basic like 155 millimeter artillery shells. Why? Because that doesn't make money for the military industrial complex. It's this low margin stuff, 155 millimeter shell. This is like almost commodity. They make more margin on expensive items like F-35, which makes great submarine, and they make or like the Queen HMS Queen Elizabeth, which it's just having another fire just like last weekend. And so this is they purposely deindustrialize United States. So no matter U.S. Feds can print money all they want. They can add in zeros on a computer, on a keyboard, digitally add money. But that money is not going to bio-industrial production. That's something where China and Russia shines. Russia is outproducing U.S. and Europe combined right now in terms of artillery shell production. And in the land war, guess what? Artillery is still the king. Except now they have the added bonus of hooking up the drones with artillery, so they can have precision bombardment. And this is what we see with the Ukrainian war, where I have DPRK, North Korea with Russia combined is beating the industrial production of entire Europe and United States.
Oh, and we're not even mentioning China. Actually, China, if you were to look at the level of industrialization of China, it would be, I think it would be like Europe, the US, and even India, and probably Japan too. I mean, the level is outstanding. But this is, you just mentioned just before. You see, the problem is that it's a cultural problem because of the financialized economy. It's just about printing money. And what we see is that all those positions in the GDP are all completely fake. So now you have the military. It's profit based, not purpose based. So it's highly inflated. You have weapons that are high tech but are worth nothing because it's not close to the reality. It's not for defense. Now the healthcare is the same. Healthcare in the US is profit based, not purpose based. Healthcare, you're supposed to treat people, to make them live a better life. No, when it's profit-based, it's completely inflated. So healthcare in the US, in the GDP, it's 18%. China is 6%. Guess what? They live a longer life in China. Education. Education is the same. Actually, education, the biggest US assets, you know what it is? It's student debt. $1.7 billion. Can you imagine? Because education is profit-based, it's not purpose-based.
You know what, Angelo? I think U.S. today can best be described as techno-feudalism. Techno-feudalism, because right now U.S. still has some high-tech wonders, but it's all to deploy to extract resources from the workers in U.S. Like all the example you listed, education, healthcare, even the military-industrial complex is created to extract rent from the rest of the Americans. And so we are peons, Angelo. We're peons and we're serfs. We're serfs to give out our produce to our masters in Washington. And that's how they view the relationship with the rest of the world as well. Everybody, all are peons. Anybody who is not moving their circle, who do not take vacation on Epstein's Island, everybody else are just peons, serfs. And I don't know what to do about it, Angelo, because I don't believe in the electoral process anymore. Last time I believed in it was in 2008 with the election of Obama, because I thought, okay, he represented change, but he turned out to be the best president for the Wall Street. So, and he was basically the blackface of the Wall Street. And now we are here. We are where we are. We have another election coming up in U.S. and we get to choose either Biden or Trump. I mean, this is like deja vu. Didn't this just happen 4 years ago? And this is why a lot of young people in U.S. are also losing faith in the electoral politics, especially after the DNC screwed Bernie Sanders. So I don't have great hopes for fundamental change in the landscape of U.S. unless something more drastic happens. I think there needs to be a century of humiliation for the U.S., for people to truly wake up.
Yeah. I think it's the pain level. The pain level. They haven't reached the pain level where people rise up, because you see, I think, I'm going to shock you, and I shock myself when I say this. First time in my life, I believe that the only way is armed struggle. I never believed I will ever say that. They will not hand over the power, and the only way is armed struggle. The problem, armed struggle, you know what it means. You know Chinese history. Armed struggle is devastating, but we are not. The problem is that they are limiting the level of pain. So you are going to be struggling. You are going to be on a survival mode as an individual, but you are not going to be willing to sacrifice your life.
To draw a parallel to China, I think we're like right now just before the Opium War. We're not even there's still like a long stretch of decline from the 1840, from the Opium War to like 1949. There's like 100 years in between. We're just starting. We're just getting started, Angelo. We are still at, like, you're right. We're like at the point where they're boiling the frogs, but the water is just lukewarm, so people can feel the temperature rise, but it's still pretty comfortable. It's not like the water is not reaching boiling point yet.
But you know why it's working? Actually, when you look at the social engineering project that you have in the US, actually, this is a good way to divide and control people, and actually to better control in general. Well, you see, once you erase completely the identity, you destroy the sense of love, patriotism, sense of family, religion. Those are all fundamentals that make people strong. You fight, people die for that. They die for an ideal and so on. Now, when you have completely done this, finalized this deconstruction, people are completely isolated, because it's a project of isolation. You're not part of a community. You are not part of a common destiny as a people.
You know why, Angelo? Because that makes you the perfect consumer. Anybody
Exactly.
who watched the Fight Club, the movie, you understand that. Because you feel the loneliness of being separated from your community. You feel the isolation. The only thing that to feed the kind of hollowness you feel inside is you can buy stuff. You can buy more stuff to make yourself feel better. This is how the hyper capitalist society works. They want to atomize the society. They want to isolate the individuals so they can sell more products to you. You are the perfect. Oh, that's a beautiful.
Exactly. It's beautiful. Actually, this building, I remember this is the university. Is that the university, or is it what is it? That's a massive building.
It's one of the seven sisters of Stalin. So during the Stalin's last years, they built like 7 buildings like that in that style, and they all serve a different purpose. Like one building is currently the home of a Russian foreign ministry. So that might be that building we're looking at. That might be the foreign.
It's a beautiful city, amazing city.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I have to say, it's been a fantastic 2 hours, action-packed here with Carl Zha, with Angelo Giuliano. Gentlemen, fantastic. I have to tell you, it's been very insightful as well. A lot to do behind the scenes here, but we're going to let you guys chat for the next couple of minutes here, and you can enjoy beautiful sight here in Moscow. A little bit of a gray day, very understandable for the situation. Just before we head out, we'll read you one of the last live updates from RT. A total of 107 people, including 3 children, remain in the hospital after the terrorist attack on the Crocus City Hall. Russian Deputy Minister Tatiana Golikova has said, adding that 15 of the patients are in extremely serious conditions. Our hearts and prayers go out to them, with 42 in serious condition. The Moscow Regional Health Ministry previously reported that 121 people were injured as a result of the shooting, but said that 14 of them did not require hospitalization. It's been quite an eventful day here, gentlemen, and thank you once again. I will see you, gentlemen, backstage. We'll go to a full screen, and we'll let this fantastic audience that has enjoyed us for a couple of hours chat amongst yourself. Do not forget, look below there. You will see channels like Carl Zha, Daniel Dumbrell, Angelo Giuliano, I Chung Ching, Reporterfy Media, yours truly. And, well, we'll leave it at that, guys. How does that sound? We'll talk to you guys soon backstage. Take care, everybody.